If only they knew. The hub for young business minds.
Yes, so my name is Remy Blumenfeld, and I am a coach working mostly with the founders of content-driven companies. So that's people who run TV production companies, film production companies, animation studios, digital games, publishing, anything where the raw material is ideas. If you're working in an ideas-driven business, then that's my specialty. And I started out working in that area myself because I've been a TV producer most of my life, and then switched over to coaching and advising other business leaders for a couple of reasons. One, because I felt like coaching is what you end up doing when you're a leader of any business, but you do it usually without having had any training yourself in how to coach, and usually with people who don't want to be coached because they're executives in your company. So I was a sort of unofficial, untrained coach, and then I got training in that area and decided that I would put all the learning that I'd had over the years to work in helping other founders of companies. And mainly what I give away is the mistakes that I made along the way, which were plenty. And I think we can learn so much from other people's mistakes as well as from their successes, but more perhaps from their mistakes, which you only see later in the rearview mirror. And so my goal is to help other people avoid making many of the expensive mistakes that I made along the way. And I've just launched a new online program which is called Stand Out, which is specifically for founders of content companies. Because what I discovered in my coaching one-on-one, Greg, was that I was doing a lot of the same modules over and over again, because if you're the founder of a content-driven business, you have the same stumbling blocks. I didn't know that when I started out doing this program, but that's how it turned out. So I packaged it into a program and it's called Stand Out.
Brilliant.
I feel like I talked much too long.
No, that's perfect. That's brilliant. It's a great intro, and we'll definitely go deeper into those a bit later on. Normally, I would start off the podcast by diving into what people are like when they're at school, but there's a particular article that you made, and it really grabbed my attention. And I thought, what better way than to sort of use that as a way to get into the conversation. And the article was on 8 great questions to turn a stranger into a friend. Now, I'm putting you on the spot here, perhaps, but do you remember that list? And do you want to give a brief introduction before I sort of fire off what some of those questions are, and direct those questions towards you?
Yeah, so it was amazing to me how that article connected with people, because when you put stuff out online, you never know what people are going to pick up on and whatnot. So that was in Forbes, and within a couple of days, it had hundreds of thousands of readers. And I think what it connected with was the idea of turning strangers into friends, because all of us go through life, go to social events when we still could go to social events, hoping to make connections and forge deeper relationships with people, but often end up feeling like we're still as alone as we were when we came. Maybe we've got a few numbers, maybe we've got a few business cards, but we haven't really forged any connections. And I think what this piece did, using some information from Harvard University, was to help people understand how, by asking questions which reveal something about the other person, and inevitably reveal something about you, because you can't really ask a question that you're not prepared to answer. If you ask somebody at a party, what was the most joyous memory of the last year, chances are they're going to open up and warm up to you and share that, but they're also going to ask that question back to you. Yeah. So it's about reciprocity. It's about vulnerability. It's about not looking good. I think what we all have a tendency to do in any situation, like whether it's a job interview or whether it's a networking event or whether it's just meeting somebody on the street, we often try and impress them with who we are and what we've done and what we've achieved and why they might be interested in us. Because I think, it's just human to feel like, I'm not that interesting. I'm not that special. I'm not that important. I'm not that successful. So to make you interested in me, I might start off by saying something about me, or I might ask you something about you, but it was be in the world of doing and having. Where do you work? Where do you come from? Where do you live? And those kind of questions tend to limit the interaction. Whereas if you ask questions in the domain of feeling, being, experiencing, if you share something about what you felt, experienced, that makes you seem more real, and it invites the other person to be more real. And the truth is, we're all just waiting to be more real with each other, but we need a little help.
Yeah.
So you can probably remind me better than I can of what exactly the questions were. But like one of them might be, do you have a favorite superhero? It's a kind of silly question, but it just takes people into a different place. Because like if they say, oh, it's Spider-Man, well, why is that? Why not Batman? And suddenly you're having a conversation about values and entertainment and a whole nother level.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, like you said, it definitely resonated with me for that reason. Whenever I go to a business event, or even like in a dating situation or any sort of walk of life, you always get that awkward interaction with someone where you just, oh, how's the weather? Oh, how's this? How's that? But these questions, which if you don't mind, we'll do a quick fly through them, and I'll ask you some.
Okay.
I think it's definitely a great way to sort of find out more about you rather than just sort of, like the surface level stuff. So
great, go for it. Go for it.
We'll fly through them. So firstly, what excites you right now?
What excites me right now is nature, because before COVID, I was just dipping in and out of nature. And now I'm living in my house in the country, and I'm literally seeing every leaf fall from the trees in autumn. So I'm kind of looking forward to spring. I'm excited by that. I'm excited by nature. Yeah.
I love that. And what are you looking forward to just in life in general?
Yeah. So, my rule of thumb used to be always have 3 big things to look forward to, a big holiday, a work event, and something in your personal life. And what I've come to realize through COVID, because none of these things are possible, you can't look forward to big things because they just might be cancelled or postponed or banned. So I've just started looking forward to much smaller things. So like a book that I haven't read that I want to read, a phone call with someone, even just, like a bubble bath. I know it sounds silly and small, but little things are what I'm looking forward to now.
Love that again. So what's the best thing that's happened to you this year? I know it's been a terrible year, but that is a great question if you can find something.
Yeah, it is. It's a tough question, because the best thing in a bad year for me has been kind of reminding myself of something that I already knew, but there's a difference between knowing something and feeling it. And I think what this year taught me, showed me, revealed to me was that my life is made up mostly of who I love and who loves me. There are lots of other things which COVID has taken away.
Yeah.
But I'm left with friends and family who I am in regular touch with, who I connect with and who love me and who I love. And so it's reminded me of that really important lesson, because I think we can often get caught up with the idea that we are what we do, what we have. And in the end, none of that matters.
No, of course, I completely agree with that one. What do you do for fun? Again, it's a bit of a weird one because of the situation, but I guess you saw.
No, I don't agree. I think it's a fine one. It's a fine one because I'm a huge believer in doing what you love for work. And basically, if it's not fun, we spend, I don't know how much of a percentage of our life at work. And so
A lot.
Yeah, a lot, right? So I'm a huge, especially for entrepreneurs and business people, that if you can find something you do that you love, then okay, you may get reward, you may get recognition, you may get rich and famous, in other words. But even if you don't, you'll still be having fun. Because if you, I don't know, I mean, pick an example, like if you love sailing, right? If you love the water and you love sailboats, and you have a company that charters sailboats, you'll be spending most of your time on the water doing what you love. And you might make money from it, you might grow your business, you might sell your business. But the journey will have been fun. It will have been an adventure, it will have been play. And so I do what I love, which is working with people to have their dreams come true. And every interaction where that happens a little or a lot, feels like a win for me, and I come away feeling like I've made a unique contribution to somebody's business and somebody's life.
We'll definitely get onto that a bit later. That's one of my favorite sort of topics to discuss. But the last few on these ones, who is your favorite superhero or your favorite character in general? I think with this one, mine isn't the superhero, it's the villain. I think mine's the Joker for many reasons.
Okay.
But how about
And
yours?
why is that?
I don't know. I quite like the sort of the rebellious nature of him, and yeah, just the way he's not afraid to sort of come out and be his true self in a mad way. I know that's quite a weird twist on perspective, but I think
Yeah.
that's why I'd pick him.
Well, I really encourage you people generally to channel other people in the world who inspire them, because the fact is, most of the time, the conversation that you're having, the conversation that I'm having, is mostly with ourselves. The voice in our head is who we end up spending most of our dialogue with.
Yeah.
And usually that's not a very helpful voice, because it's a voice that's designed to protect us from failing. But what it does is it says, don't try that, you'll fail. Don't do that, you did it before and it didn't work. And so I love to have people in my head who I can call on really quickly, whether it's someone like Usain Bolt, who always just advises to go for it, go ahead, don't look sideways, don't look behind, or whether it's someone like Michelle Obama, who I feel like has enormous grace in everything she does. People throw stuff at her and she just bats it off. So I think if we can find lots of superheroes in different ways, if you like, who can inspire us, that's a great thing. If I had to pick one right now, I've just been watching Billions. Have you watched any of that on Sky?
No, I haven't. No.
I mean, everyone would love it. It's a great drama, but Paul Giamatti plays the part of the district attorney, and he gives this amazing speech, Greg, where he talks about shame and owning your shame, and he basically epitomizes a leader who is vulnerable. And I think that's a great role model for me right now.
No, I think that is definitely one thing. It's always good, like you said, to have those. Almost, I think perhaps in the ancient days they would have been gods, deities, goddesses. But I think you're right. It's important to have that figure in your mind to sort of relate to and stay motivated from.
Yeah, it's just useful because you know what they'd say, right?
Yeah.
You know what the Joker would advise you to do.
Yeah.
And it probably is quite different from what the voice in your head is saying to do.
Yeah.
I like the idea of channeling a villain because I'm quite a pleaser. I was kind of raised to please. So before I know it, I'm trying to say what you want me to say, and I'm trying to do what you want me to do. And the idea of channeling a villain is quite exciting because they go against what everyone wants them to say or do. They just do whatever they want to say or do.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be quite useful for us.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot in that on a psychological perspective, but that's another story for another day, I think. The last couple on these, charitable causes. I think this is a great question because it really gives you a sense of the person you're dealing with. So is there any charitable causes that you support actively or would support?
Well, both, but I think, like, for me at the moment, supporting homeless charities is a big thing, because I think we all face challenges right now, but people without a home everywhere, but particularly in the UK, face big challenge with winter coming up. So I support homeless charities, in particular charities that support gay homeless people, because a lot of people don't recognize that even in a country like the UK, a lot of homeless young people are made homeless because of their sexuality.
Oh wow, yeah. I didn't even sort of think of that, to be fair. Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, me neither, because I thought we were past that. But
yeah,
when you look at the statistics, and there's a charity called the Albert Kennedy Trust, and it supports young people who have been made homeless as a result of their sexuality, because their parent, they couldn't live in the home anymore. It might be religious reasons, it might be other reasons. There's a whole raft of reasons why we think we're in a very tolerant society, but it's just not as tolerant as we think it is.
No, definitely. But all praise be to you for sort of taking on that responsibility of sort of helping out somebody, a charity, whatever it may be. Just going out of your way to help people is amazing. So, yeah, thank you for that.
I don't deserve any credit for that. I
No, you
do
do.
tiny bit, but there are people who do deserve credit, and hopefully they're listening now.
Yeah, hopefully. And so the last two then, what's the most important thing that I should know about you? You covered off a lot of great things, but is there one main important thing I should know about yourself?
Yeah, I think so. I think you should know that in my 20s, I nearly died.
Wow.
And it was so bad that the doctors let me keep my Irish Terrier, Sam, with me in the hospital ward at St. Thomas's Hospital overnight,
Wow.
which was a sign that they thought I was going to die. And obviously, I'm here, and I didn't die. But it really taught me some important lessons that are with me to this day. And I think a lot of us go through life trying to avoid death, the topic, the thought, the fear of it. And yet the truth is, even if you live till 83, which is quite a long life, it's actually the life expectancy for people in the West. If you live till 83, that's only 1,000 months. Okay, so
Wow.
our lifespan is 1,000 months, which is really short. And the sooner we get to confront that and deal with that, for all of us, the better. Because there was an amazing woman called Bronnie Ware who wrote a book called 5 Regrets of the Dying. And she was able to write that because she had been a palliative care nurse working with people on their deathbeds. So she worked with a whole spectrum of people, mostly old, in their dying day. And what she discovered, Greg, was that human beings tend to have 5 regrets on their deathbed. They share these regrets. Number 1, I wish I hadn't spent so much time at work. Number 2, I wish I'd connected more profoundly with the people who I loved. And number 3 was, I wish I'd been truer to my own purpose and not gone the way that other people wanted me to go. And that often had to do with vocation. We were talking earlier about doing what you love. Yeah. You know, I think a lot of people ended up doing something because they felt they should, not because they wanted to. And when you come to the end of your life, you realize, I wasted my whole life. So having had that experience in my 20s, I'm really aware that I don't want to die with regrets.
Yeah.
And if you know what the regrets are of people, you can kind of avoid them.
Well, I'm glad you said that. We'll definitely cover that in a moment. But before I get to the last question, I'd just like to say those questions were great, and I'm sure you'll agree as you created them. But I think just for even this chat, already myself and people listening know so much more about you that from all different angles and perspectives that we would never have covered. So yeah, definitely a great list of questions that I'd recommend to anyone sort of meeting someone for the first time. Yeah, one more, and it leads to how I normally sort of kick off with everyone. Okay. Where did you grow up? And that leads me to, what was your life like when you was younger? Because a lot of entrepreneurs and people involved in business take different paths, different sort of routes, and have different mindsets. So I wondered, what was you like as a kid? What was you focused on? And was you clever? Yeah. Was you naughty? All of that stuff.
I think we're all shaped by our childhoods. You know, I think it's a good question because the first 5 years are really formative, and the first 10 years are formative too. So first 5 years are crucial. The next 5 years pretty important, and they lead on from that. I grew up with parents who were like global nomads, like gypsies. I was born in Paris. They then moved to Vienna. They then moved to New York. They then moved to London. And so I was moving around. I didn't have friends because I couldn't make them. I barely learned one language before we moved, and I had to learn another language. And, you know, it sounds very glamorous, doesn't it, to say I lived in London, Paris, and New York and Vienna before I was 6. But the reality was I didn't form bonds. I didn't make friends, didn't speak the language. And I was always an outsider. And even when my parents moved to the little village of Grantchester near Cambridge, where I grew up, made famous by the TV series, I felt like an outsider because, you know, for a start, I look different. Now, in multicultural Britain now, I don't look so different, especially in London, but you have to remember in Cambridge in those days, everyone looked like you. You know, it was like blonde white kids, and I looked different. So I was the Paki kid. I'm not Indian, but I'm Jewish. So because I looked dark, I looked Jewish, I was the Paki, and I spoke differently. I didn't speak like I speak now because my parents were American, so I spoke English with an American accent as a kid. I can still speak American fluently if you ever want to hear me speak American, but I spoke American, so I looked different, I sounded different, and because I knew I was gay, this is a strange thing to say, but as a kid, I knew it, you know, that sense of difference was something I felt as early as 7 or 8 years old. So I felt different, I looked different, I sounded different, and that definitely affected my journey in ways that I can see are really positive and good, and also ways that were difficult as a kid and challenging.
I think not a lot, but there are sort of some people that just from an early age know that they're different in some way, and they're the ones that tend to, if they can channel that energy right, from what I've seen, they tend to go on and do amazing things. It's sort of, I've managed to meet so many different business people, and like you said, you felt different because of your sexuality and you on a personal level, but some people just feel different, like with their interests, whether it's like business or sport, and it's quite I don't know the word, it's quite encouraging, I guess, to see that, or quite hopeful to see groups of people really channeling their own individual energy and going on to do what they want to do and not sticking to what, like, you know, mainstream society says they should do, you know?
Yeah, and I think in a way, there's an advantage to, maybe that's the wrong way to put it. Someone who looks different, someone who sounds different, someone who comes from a different culture or has a different sexuality, we already are confronting that and recognizing that, but it often makes us feel quite alone and unable to share it, because when we feel not good enough, because we feel less than the ideal, like if most people look and sound a certain way and you don't look and sound that way, or if most people have certain interests and you don't share those interests, whether it be in sport or industry or whatever it might be, if you feel like an outsider, very often, especially when you're young, it tends to make you feel less than. You don't just feel like, oh, I'm different and different is great. You feel different and you feel less than. And when we feel less than, we're very unable to share our vulnerability. The immediate reaction to feeling less than and different is to say, I'll be better at everything, or I'll be better at something, or I will be perfect. I'll be so talented, so brilliant, so gorgeous that no one will reject me. And the problem with that is when we're perfect, or trying to be perfect, or trying to have it all sorted, we push other people away. And this is not unique to people of different sexualities and different ethnicities. This is true of all human beings. So if you think of someone you know, Greg, who, when they go to a party, we were talking about parties, when they go to a party, they just make friends instantly. People kind of gravitate towards them. You could take them to a B&B in the middle of nowhere and they'd come away with friends. When you think of that person in your life, and we all have a couple of people like that who we know, they tend not to be perfect. They tend to be quite vulnerable, flawed people who share their humanity, and that's what people respond to. People respond to the frailty, the vulnerability, the weakness, the failures. And yet the rest of us are so busy trying to hide our vulnerabilities, hide our failures, hide our flaws, that we don't connect. It kind of ties into the original question you had about the 8 questions and how to turn strangers into friends. The best way to turn a stranger into a friend is to be human. And I think people often forget that, particularly in job interviews. I saw it myself when I was in a senior position and interviewing people for jobs. When people felt insecure, and very often it was because they were working class, because they were from a Black or ethnic minority community, they felt insecure. And what they would do then is try and impress you with how great they were, everything that they had done, everywhere they had worked. And if you've ever listened to someone, well, you have, because you host a podcast, but in a normal situation, when you listen to someone just talking about themselves for a long time, it's really boring. It puts you off because you don't really want that person around. You just think, God, if this was the job interview, in this 30 minutes, they were so self-involved, I couldn't stand to have them around. They suck all the energy from the room.
Yeah, draining.
Draining, right. Whereas what someone who's really confident does, and this is really true of kids who've gone to public school, what they do is they say, oh, it's so great to meet you. What a beautiful office you have. I just want to say that I've wanted to meet you for such a long time because I've noted all your accomplishments and I was really impressed by what you wrote last week in Forbes. And they make it about you.
Yeah.
They turn the mirror on you. When someone's confident, they don't talk about themselves and show you how brilliant they are. They show you how brilliant you are.
Wow.
And you were talking about, in dating, this is the same thing. The same thing applies. Most people assume that marriages, relationships break up because you get bored of the other person, right? You get tired of the other person. You're no longer in love with the other person. That's what you would have thought, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But actually, that's not why relationships break up.
No?
Relationships break up when I'm tired of who I am with the other person. When I'm no longer interested in myself with the other person. And so if you apply that to any situation where it's two people talking, if they are fascinated by themselves when they're with you, if they feel attractive, interesting, powerful, glamorous, whatever it is they want most to feel when you're with them, doesn't matter who you are or what you're saying or what you're doing or what you're wearing. It's about how they feel when they're with you. People hire, in job interviews, people hire the person who makes them feel powerful, brilliant, accomplished, exciting. They don't hire the person who is the most brilliant, powerful, magnetic personality, because that person kind of, like you said, drains the energy from the room, particularly when they're coming in for a team role. You might hire that person to be the CEO, but you wouldn't hire them to be your assistant or your right-hand person, because who you want with you every day in the office, 8 hours a day, is somebody who makes you feel great.
Yeah.
And it's the same in a dating situation. I'm sure you've been on dates, with people who, they might be the most beautiful, intelligent, successful person in the world, but they don't ask you questions. They don't make you feel excited by yourself. And so you just can't explain it, but you don't really want to see them again, because it's how we feel about ourselves when we're with someone that is the important thing.
Yeah, I've had that though. Like a girl said to me, "Oh, I don't know why, but when I'm driving, like, because I used to drive her around, and she's like, when I'm driving with you, I don't know why, I just feel like so special and so important." And that's literally what you're basically saying. It's about how she felt around me rather than the other way around,
Yeah, because if you think, like, we're all mirrors for other people. We're all mirrors. So what mirror do you want to have? You want to have a mirror that makes you feel great about yourself. You don't want to have a mirror that makes you feel shit. Yeah. So if you can make someone feel exciting, glamorous, funny, whatever it is, that's the secret to success. And obviously in a good relationship, like a good work relationship, it's a two-way thing. You feel more excited by yourself when you're with them, and they feel more excited by themselves when they're with you. And that's the chemistry. That's the magic.
That's the key. Do you think everyone can sort of take on that mirroring effect and sort of take on that attribute of making other people feel better, or do you think it's sort of more designated for smaller members of society, or do you think anyone can sort of take on that skill?
Oh my goodness, I don't think it's to do with smaller members of society at all. I think it's a human thing.
Yeah.
It's a human thing that we like to be excited by ourselves. We like to feel that we're interesting and we have something to contribute. We like to feel like we're making a contribution. And so, this exists on every single level. And once you get it, it will transform your relationships, it will transform your work life. Instead of thinking about how can I seem strong? How can I seem capable? How can I seem impressive to whoever it is? Ask yourself, how can I help them to seem powerful, interesting, whatever it is that person wants to seem? And it ends up usually having you do the opposite of what you've came in thinking you were going to do. So in a job interview, what we tend to do is we rehearse everything that we want the other person to know about us, right? So we look through our CV, we figure out what we want to tell them. We're thinking it's all about the answers, and we don't pay much attention to the questions. But questions, back to your original thing, questions are where it all starts. So instead of polishing up your own CV, research the person you're about to meet really well. Find out what interests you most about them, and find out what you're most curious about in their past, in their history, in their story. And then go in and ask them that. Because if you start a meeting with someone, you go, I'm so excited to meet you because I've been really curious my whole life about how you got into podcasting. That is a whole different opening than I'm just waiting to tell you all about my life.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I know it sounds obvious, but I love good advice. So that is perfect for me. And talking of good advice, did you say you was ill when you was 20? And that's what gave you a whole sort of new perspective on life. Is that right?
In my 20s, yeah, I was so ill that I thought I was going to die, and I lived through it. And what it taught me was that instead of trying to play the game of success, I could play a game of having fun doing what I loved, and if it brought me success, great. If it didn't, too bad. Because in the end, what's really important is who I love and who loves me, and everything else is a bonus. We're not on our deathbed. You won't be thinking, I promise you, and I know that from my experience, you won't be thinking about what's my bank balance. How much have I got left to pay off on my mortgage? What awards have I won? You won't be thinking about that. You'll be thinking, who have I loved and who has loved me?
Yeah. I think that's such an important message to get across, because a lot of people, especially people my age, 22, 20 odd, in the business world, they're all fixated on getting the car, getting the money, getting all these things. And I try and get that message across to them, but also get that message across to myself that these things are almost irrelevant, because like you said, at the end of it all, when it's all said and done, you can't take the car with you to heaven, so that's
but you could have had an amazing life. You could have, it's not some, I mean, to use your analogy, it's not really the car, it's where have you been with it, and I think if you focus more on where would I like to go rather than what would I like to drive, that's already a good way of reframing it. Because when it's back to the thing I was saying before, when you're doing what you love, and when you're doing it passionately, and when you're doing it asking other people for help, this is another huge lesson. Instead of ever feeling like I have to do it all on my own, success has to be just me doing it on my own. If you ask other people for help and advice along the way, it helps get you there so much further and faster. And the thing is, people love to give help and advice. So if there's someone in your life who can help you in any way, big or small, if there's someone who you meet who can give you some advice because they've been on the road that you're on, ask them, because they'll love it. They'll feel good about themselves to have been able to contribute to you in that way, and they'll feel pleased that you asked, and you'll get something out of it amazing too. So you don't have to do it on your own, but the journey has to be fun. Because when someone like me meets someone who is passionate about what they do and just loves it and asks for help, that's a completely winning formula. Whereas if you meet someone who they just want a new car and they want to make money, that's so unexciting. Imagine there's two people here waiting to come see me, and one of them, they're just about material success for themselves and how they can get rich and how they can make money. And another person is just totally immersed in the joy of making something and wants my advice. Well, one is boring and the other I want to help.
Yeah, I get that. Is that experience then, that near-death experience, was that what propelled you into the business world, or was you sort of involved in that beforehand, or what was that transition like?
I was already in the business world. I didn't go to university. I got my first job when I was 16, working in a TV station as a runner, and I loved that. I loved that experience, and I just took it from there, but up until the point when I was seriously ill in my late 20s, I had been quite driven by all the things you were just talking about, you know, wanting to prove myself, wanting to prove that I was good enough. And that near-death experience changed it for me into realizing life could be a lot more joyous and light and fun if I just did what I loved. And as it happened, a certain amount of success and recognition followed. But my general advice to everyone is, if you start from a place of doing what you love, you may get money and fame. But if you start from a quest of, I want to be rich and famous, you'll never find joy, because there's no joy in rich and famous.
No.
But if you do what you love, you may get rich and famous, but if you don't, you're still doing what you love. If you're driven by rich and fame, then you won't be happy anyway. So what's the point?
No, I definitely agree. And it's something that I'm, I guess, fortunate enough to sort of, like, from hearing from people like yourself to tell me that. Like, I've had so many people say that to me, and I think I almost feel blessed that I've sort of learned. I haven't taken it on board fully, because I'm still sort of a bit too young, I think, mentally and just in life. Like, I still want to go and do the stupid things, but I'm sort of grateful that I've had people like yourself tell me those great things, you know.
But what is there that you would love to do that you're not doing?
That's the thing. I think I am doing what I love doing, but I think I'm not doing it to the level that I want to be doing it at. I think that's the sort of the missing link, I think.
So give me an example of something you're doing that you love doing, but you're not doing it to the level that you think you're capable of.
Just like like with the podcast and the videos that I create and the articles, I would like there to be more of an influence in that. So if I say if I write an article, a few hundred people may see it, but I would love it if it was a few 100,000 people, you know. So it's just sort of, I get annoyed that my reach isn't as big as it probably could be, you know.
So what you're doing is quite a common thing, which is you're making a big complaint with no solution. You're going, I'm frustrated. I'd like to have a bigger reach than I have, and that frustrates me. And what I would encourage you to do is to actually pin down what success in that area would look like. How many people do you want to reach? What kind of platforms do you want to reach them on? Make some really concrete lists of what success in that particular area, which I guess in this case for you is communicating to a mass audience, would look like. So the problem is, when we set goals that are too broad, we never achieve them. Right? If I say to you, you know, 2 years from now, I want to have traveled the world. That sounds great, but the truth is, I might, at the end of 2 years, COVID permitting, I might have gone to 3 countries. I might have gone to 5 countries. I might have gone to even to 10 countries, but I wouldn't have traveled the world. So when it's too big, we end up feeling like we've failed. So your goals need to be very specific. If you say to me, look, by the end of this year, I want to be published in Huffington Post, I want to be published in Inc., and I want to be published in the Evening Standard, and I want to be published in Forbes, and I want the things that I've written to reach an audience cumulatively of 1 million people, and I want it to be broken down in this way, 200,000 here, 200, then at least you have something to aim for.
Right.
And even if you don't actually achieve the ultimate goal, you might at the end of the year go, well, I didn't get all of those publications, but I got 2 of them, and I got this amount of readership. So 2 out of 5 isn't that bad. Or, you know, it's just when your ambition is too wide, you never achieve it, and you always end up feeling like a failure, because you'll never reach the whole world. You know, you're saying now it'd be nice to reach 200,000 people, but unless you define that and write it down, when you get the 200,000 people, you'll say, well, I wanted more than that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think many people, like similar to me, are always chasing more, you know. They always think, oh yeah, but I did achieve what I wanted to achieve last year, but now just, you know, one more, and you're constantly chasing the carrot on the stick, I guess.
Well, it's fine if you say you did achieve what you wanted to last year. That's fine. You're already ahead of the curve. Most people, because they're not clear enough about what they want to achieve, end up feeling like they never have. Because it's very easy to say success looks like what you achieved, or success looks like what someone else achieved, or success looks like what I didn't achieve. And unless you say, to me, in the area of fun travel and adventure, going to New Zealand next year for 6 weeks would be success.
Yeah.
Unless you say in the area of personal fitness, being able to lift this amount of weight or have lost this amount of weight, unless you're very specific, you just never achieve it.
Yeah, of course.
And I think why we're not specific enough is because it's an excuse. You can always go, I want more. Well, what does more mean? It's just a kind of cop out.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say, I want to achieve this, then you can see very starkly to what extent you have and to what extent you haven't. You know, I coach business leaders, so very often and in the creative sector, and very often the thing that they're very resistant to saying is how much they want to turn over and how much profit they want to make. Until you nail that number down, you have nothing to aim for. And you'll never be, you know, not never, but, you know, it's unlikely that you're going to be as rich as, you know, Bill Gates next year. So unless you say, I want to turn over X amount and make Y amount of profit, you'll always feel like you're failing. There's always people around who are achieving a lot more.
Thank you for that, by the way. I love all this mindset stuff. We're running out of time. I wish I had all day with you, but one like more like solid thing I definitely wanted to bring up on the topic of mindset is the Eureka moments. Again, you wrote another Forbes article on to how to have more of those Eureka moments. So if you don't mind sort of explaining what that means, what is a Eureka moment, and how we can sort of help to generate more of those, please.
So, I mean, for me, a Eureka moment is when you come up with an idea that is transformative. It could be a new recipe, a new idea for a TV show, a new idea for a business, something which you've taken 1 + 1 + 1 and it equals 100.
Yeah.
And often what we try and do is we have these in brainstorms. You know, we go, let's have a brainstorm, let's get the office together and everyone will come up with ideas. But that tends not to work for a number of reasons. One, because extroverts just dominate, and people who are more introverted, who think up ideas in private and come up with their ideas on their own and take a while to come up with ideas, they tend to not bring their ideas to brainstorm. So for a start, you're only harnessing half the brain power in the room. And then secondly, everyone's really trying to impress everyone else, mainly the boss. So it's not the best environment. What history has shown is that good ideas come to you when you're not thinking about them. They come to you when you're in the bath, right? When you're on a walk, when you are doing something completely different. So my advice is, if you have a problem that you want to solve at work, say it's a big, the challenge is, I want to start a business and I don't know quite what the business should be that I want to start. That's the thought, that's the top line of the thought. And you carry it with you in a situation where you're completely distracted and in your element. Like for me, driving, okay? So when I'm driving, this sounds terrible, but my brain kind of switches off. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the road, but often I don't know where I am. I mean, let's hope traffic cops aren't watching, but so for me, a long drive is a great way to come up with new stuff. And I'm not actually thinking that I'm thinking, but I am thinking.
Yeah.
So for some people, it's like just going on a hike, or like even just doing the hoovering, whatever it is that you do, that when you're doing it, you just in it.
Yeah.
Do that thing. And then you'll see when you come back to the same idea, the same question that you asked yourself the day before or that morning, you'll be amazed what is there, because your mind has been working while you've been resting. You've been resting your mind, but it's been processing stuff. And instead of bringing people together for a brainstorm, set them free for a walk, a cycle ride, mowing the lawn, whatever it is that helps their brain process stuff. And then come back to it and say, what has your brain come up with? And their first thought will probably be, oh, nothing, because they hadn't really thought about it. But what you'll be amazed by is that there are new ideas that are just suddenly there that you didn't know were there.
That's something I found as well. Like, even I wake up at, sometimes the past week I've been waking up at 5 a.m. or 3 a.m. and that's when some of the best ideas come, because I'm just sort of zoned out almost, and it feels like it opens up a new lane in my brain for all this ideas and creativity and just loads more things to come in. And it's normally at 3 and 5 a.m. in the morning, which is quite bizarre, but I guess it's pretty much what you're saying.
But yeah, so I think I'm just suggesting that you add to that process which is already happening for you, just one thing, which is setting yourself a targeted assignment, saying, in my subconscious time over the next few days, I want to come up with an answer to this, and then be really clear about what it is you want.
Yeah.
And then see what comes. Because right now you've got lots of stuff flooding in, but it's not really being decided by you, it's being decided by your subconscious. So intentionally say, I want my subconscious to tell me what to do about this, whatever this is.
Yeah.
And then see what comes. I'd really be interested to know if you don't find that those elusive answers just flood into your conscious brain.
Yeah. I could, thank you again. I could milk you all day for advice and stuff. But before we begin to close off, it'd be great to find out a bit more about the work you're doing at the moment. And yeah, just find out a bit more about what you're sort of up to at the moment.
Yeah, so I started by saying that before COVID, I was already devising an online program, which is 9 modules, 9 weeks for the founders of content-driven companies. So anybody whose business is really about selling ideas. The ideas might end up as a game, they might end up as a TV show, they might end up as a book, but they start off as an idea. If you're in that business, I've developed a 9-part course, which is called Stand Out. And you can find it at remyblumenfeld.com. And essentially, it's packaging all the learning that I share with clients one-on-one into an online course so that people can do it around the world. And it costs a lot less than one-on-one coaching because it's on video. And it's just really designed to deal with the essential obstacles and challenges which founders face, and specifically founders of content-driven businesses. So if you're thinking of starting a company in this space, it's a really useful tool for you. And it deals with everything from managing clients to your own mental mindset, to running a business effectively, to creating a company that someone will one day want to buy. And like I said, a lot of it is built on my successes, but more than that, it's built on things I did wrong that hopefully you can learn from by avoiding yourself.
Yeah, who better to learn from than yourself? You know, again, like you said, from the mistakes. Like, did you say millions of pounds worth of mistakes? It's quite a big mistake, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I would say millions of pounds of mistakes, because you have to remember, when you sell a company, you're selling it at a multiple of EBITDA. So if your earnings before interest and tax are £500,000, the value of that company on that day, you know, could be 50, could be £5 million, because if it's a multiple of 10. So you quickly get into that. So even in that simple example, you know, just taking a taxi that costs £50 could end up costing you £500.
Yeah.
So the mistakes quickly mount up that cost a lot of money. And I think the biggest mistake, essentially the biggest mistake I made as a young entrepreneur was trying to do it all myself and not hiring people who were older and more experienced than me. And I didn't do it for a whole number of reasons, which I can see now much more clearly, but it cost me a lot of money. Because, you know, here's the thing. How old did you say you are?
I'm 22.
And do you have a business that you're launching at the moment, or?
Yeah, I've got the podcast, social media group, which is in the very early stages, but I'm also launching a new product, should be out next month.
Okay. What you'll discover is that there's some contracts that people simply won't give to a 22-year-old.
Yeah.
And the reason is that people won't trust that much money and volume to someone who they don't fully trust and have experience of. And a lot of that has to do with what you've done before, whether you're seeking investment or whether you are seeking to sell a product. Very often what you need with you in the room is someone who's done it before a million times, who the buyer or investor trusts.
Yeah.
And whatever that person looks like, it's worth it to you to bring them into the room, either as a partner or as the lead on the project or whatever it is, because there's lots of things that are very exciting about youth, but one thing is people often just won't trust it with volume and with quantums of money. And so when I was starting out, a lot of people, buyers, clients would say to me in the nicest possible way, you know, have you ever thought about hiring so-and-so? Or have you ever thought about bringing on an experienced person like someone they knew?
Yeah.
And it was their not so subtle way of saying, you know, if you had that person who's done that a million times before, who we know and trust, and by the way, they're the godfather to my child, and if you had that person, we'd give you this work.
Yeah.
And I never took those subtle hints. I mean, they weren't that subtle, but I didn't take them. And so something like that literally cost me millions of pounds of business, because when you have the right person in the room with you, you can just get more business. And when you think you're going to do it on your own, you lose that business. And often it's about having someone who is older and more experienced than you and who the buyer likes more.
Yeah, of course. I get that. And I think, yeah, it's definitely an important message for the young people out there, because a lot like me just think, oh, you know, I can do it myself. I've got it all at my phone. But you're right. It gets to a point when you're trying to break into the bigger levels, you need a little bit more, whether it's that person, that connection, whatever it is. You just need that extra little bit of oomph, bit of power with you.
It's just about someone who the buyer trusts. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah. So what's next for you then? You're obviously you seem like you're smashing it. You don't need me to say that, but what's next for you? What have you sort of got planned coming up?
More of the same, really. I'm really excited by Standout, which we're about to launch, and it just makes my work available to a wider audience. You know, you were saying that you got that buzz from the idea of communicating with more people, and I can only coach so many people one-on-one within a week. Mm-hmm. Whereas with Standout, I can increase that exponentially and make sure that many more people benefit from all my learning, including my mistakes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, the last hard-hitting question then from that, because it obviously sounds like you're on track. What do you want your legacy to be?
You know, legacy is not really a word that I'm very fond of.
Really?
Well, because what does it mean? It means what you'll leave behind when you're dead, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really not very concerned about that, you know, and sue me, you know, I just feel like my only duty is to how I live my life when I'm here, and what I leave behind is not of interest to, you know, I should say that I come from a family of artists, right? So my granddad was a photographer and my mum is a sculptor, and they have left a legacy of, well, my mum's alive, but they will leave a legacy of, you know, in my mum's case, marble and bronze sculptures that weigh 10 tons. Wow. So that's a very kind of real, concrete legacy. It's something that will be left behind. Yeah. I don't have that same ambition.
No, that's great. It's not a question that I expect an answer to. I always throw it out just to sort of see everyone's perspective, and that's a great one. You know, it's definitely I don't know the answer to that question myself. You know, but I'm sure I'll figure it out one day down the line. But the last thing then, the floor is now yours. If there's anything you'd like to say to the audience listening, whether it's a final message or something you'd like them to go do, i.e. go follow your social media pages, please do feel free to let them know.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the spirit of what we were saying today about asking for help, asking for support, reaching out, acknowledging other people, not focusing on yourself, I would encourage everyone, obviously, to do that with me. I'm there, I'm available. Standout is there for you as a resource. And yeah, reach out and connect on the level of the other person's interests and achievements, and it won't go wrong, including with me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. And it's been, I'm very grateful for the advice you've given. Like I said, who better to learn from than someone in your position. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure too. It's felt like a great conversation.
If only they knew, the hub for young business minds.